Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the HR Huddle. My name is Renee Moelders. I'm a partner with Convergence Coaching, and I'm here with my partner, Jennifer Wilson. And happy July 15th, halfway through the month of July. Wow, unbelievable. So I'm in Massachusetts. We're having our hot summer weather. Summer is here. I think lots of heat across the country. And so hopefully you are excited about that. You're enjoying that. You're having a chance to enjoy your summer. And then also we know for HR folks, we are just deep in our summer transformation that, I'm hearing from HR leaders about evaluations and changing evaluation systems and putting in technology systems. So just lots of projects and things happening in the HR world. And so we're glad that you're taking a break and you're going to come and talk to us about some topical matter related to HR professionals. And today's topic, Jen, what I told you, I've been thinking about this because I'm watching some of my firms and watching the market and all of these big changes that are happening, specifically all of these firms that are taking private equity money. And so we're watching this and studying it and trying to understand what is the impact on talent when that happens. And I've been wondering lately about the impact of firms who aren't talking about what they're going to do. And it's a mystery. We're wondering, and definitely talent are wondering. They're looking up and they're looking at their leaders and they're wondering, are we going to have to do that? Are we going to be forced to take private equity money? Will we be able to survive without it? And if they can't get those questions answered, and they may not even be willing to ask those questions, it may feel like it's out of line or not really appropriate, especially for your younger people, staff, seniors. And you might be thinking, well, but they're not interested in that. But I'm not so sure, Jen. They're reading Going Concern, which is just like a light with this whole issue of private equity. And by the way, if you haven't read Going Concern related to that, super snarky. And so I'm worried, Jen, that firms aren't talking about what their plan is. And so we thought we would talk a little bit about this idea of visioning, of looking ahead and projecting, and then sharing those projections with your firm, with your people. And so thoughts on that, Jen, as we dive into this kind of sticky subject?
Yes, Renee. And so really the subject is, what should we say about what's happening in the market and what's happening with our firm related to ownership and transitions and things that are happening. And so at Convergence, we've long been, subscribers to the policy that says, honesty, transparency, and really up-to-date information, acknowledging what's happening in the marketplace, being straightforward and overt in your communications with your team is always the best policy. Silence, preferring not to comment, tailoring our communications to only focus on the things that feel comfortable, leaving out these very visible but awkward subjects. All of that makes your team wonder, are these folks out of touch? Are they hiding something? Like in the absence of information, people make up their own, and it's usually negative. That's one of the axioms of communication. And so we would say at Convergence, hey, everybody, hey, HR leaders, hey, talent folks, hey, firm leaders, let's be pretty transparent and overt with our people about what's happening in the market first. It's okay to say, hey, guys, there's trends out there and firms are thinking about ownership shifts. They're thinking about like BDO's ESOP model, or they're thinking about merging in firms or merging with equals or merging up into firms, or they're doing it. They're actively doing it. We're seeing that. There's several of those a week being kind of talked about or announced, or they're taking on private equity money. And that's an ownership shift. It's selling a piece of the business to a private equity firm. It's some might say raising capital. It is that for sure, but it is also usually cashing out some owners, changing the ownership makeup of the business, and admitting a third party into the business. Sometimes in the case of really large private equity transactions, admitting multiple third parties in as owners, and to just acknowledge that that's happening. And that's number one, because then they don't have to wonder if they're paying attention. I wonder if they're up to date. The second is as transparent as you can be about where you're headed. At Convergence, we've been long-standing proponents of the 5-year vision plan. We tell firms all the time, it's hard for people to want to go on a 5-year road trip with you when you don't specify where the road trip is going to. It's kind of like saying, hey, Renee, let's go on a road trip vacation, but I'm not going to tell you where we're going to. And she has to be like, gosh, is it going to be somewhere fabulous like Acadia National Park? Or are you taking me to someplace less awesome, like, a local, I don't know, lake or something, like KOA. Well, I was all of a sudden realizing that my idea of awesome and other people's are different, and my idea of yucky are some people's awesome. So whatever it is, people don't want to jump in your car and go on that road trip with your firm and build their career with you if they don't know where we're headed. And I know that if you're thinking about making an ownership transactional change, all of your nerve fibers say, stay silent, until we decide. But we're really worried about that apathy and malaise that is settling over firms, the uncertainty. The staff are telling us, the leaders at the middle level are telling us, hey, man, the fact that they're not talking about the future is loud as it could be. We think these guys are probably trying to find a transaction to do. And so they're making up their own information and they're thinking about changing their firm or changing their career or going to industry or whatever they're thinking about because they don't know where you're headed. Some firms are what we would characterize as fiercely independent. They have made the decision that they are not going to do those things. It's never a promise forever, right? We can never write it on carve it in our arm or something because we don't know what the market will do over time. But if we know the 3 to 5 year horizon does not have a transaction on the dashboard, we can't picture it. We think we could go this alone. We think there's competitive advantages to being independent. We are going to stay independent. That's our game plan. That's our agreement as a leadership team. If that's happened, we're going to cry a river over here if you do not communicate that from the top of the mountain to your team, to recruits, to clients, because we think it gives you a unique competitive advantage. And we'd be so sad if you stayed quiet about it. So anyway, that's just some first thoughts is don't hide. Right now, it's not the time for silence.
Well, and Jen, I suspect part of what's happening with firms is that they haven't decided, or they aren't sure, or they aren't on the same page. You said if your leadership team is on the same page and you have committed as a group, I'm envisioning that some of these partner groups, if I were peeking inside the boardroom, they aren't there. They aren't sure. And some people do want to take advantage of these new funding sources or are feeling scared or about the future and wondering whether or not they can make it. If all those other firms are doing it, should we? Those kind of conversations are probably going on around partner tables. And so then how do you communicate when you haven't decided?
It's a great question, but I think you have to communicate that we're aware that it's happening and we continue to discuss these opportunities as a firm, and we are evaluating our strategies and our options, and even welcoming input from your next generation. One of the things that you and I have the privilege of doing from time to time, Renee, is we facilitate retreats. And forever, I don't know how long, but we're a 24-year-old business, almost 25. For at least 20 of those years, our retreat facilitation pre-survey that we ask all the leaders, including young up-and-coming leaders and operational leaders, has a question, and I'm not going to get it right here, Renee, but it's something like, which of the following strategies would you feel we should consider as we grow our firm? And it's an M&A question. It's, should we merge? Should we consider merging up? Should we consider merging other organizations into our firm? Should we try to laterally move partners? Should we, we have all these growth things that we ask. And so this is way before the big fat trend of M&A, and people would be astounded when we give them the survey results because of how many of their people had interest in exploring like a merger of equals or a merger upstream, or just if we're not sure, why not ask what people think? Why not engage in a discussion of it? We had a firm approach us recently that said, hey, we went to a couple of sessions and got really scared that all of a sudden we thought, oh, everyone's merging, we have to too. And they got really afraid of that. And then they said, we went back and none of us talked to each other for a little while, but then all of a sudden we started talking, and we were like, I got scared in those meetings, and that, facilitator scared me. And I was thinking we were going to have to transact. And they came together and realized I was scared, but I think I was just not thinking about what we have as an advantage to go forward independently. And they had this big kind of hash it out talk as a partner group. And sometimes your partner group's too large to do that, by the way, but this was of the size that they could still get in a room together and talk. And they came away saying, we don't have to do anything right now. We're going to continue, building our strategic plan and leveraging off all the investments we've made and make new ones and compete without doing it. And we're going to tell our team that we won't re-engage on this discussion for 3 years. And that's what they ended up doing. But they weren't even talking about it as a leadership team. So we would just encourage that you at least engage in open dialogue about people's thoughts and opinions on this trend, because that's an interesting conversation. I know, Renee, you and I are asked a lot. And when we start to talk about pros and cons of the different options, which we've done in another live stream, by the way, somewhere in the past, when we do that, then, we get to hear other people's opinions, and they're interesting to hear. So if we haven't decided, are we going to decide, or are we going to stay undecided? Staying undecided and silent is a recipe for turnover, and maybe in clients and talent, both. And then you're going to kind of seal your fate, perhaps. And if you thought you were going to transact, you might devalue your asset on the way. So we would say maybe don't sit in silence and uncertainty. Engage at least at the leadership level in a pros and cons whiteboard session to discuss ideas and think about what you need to do. And maybe do it with facilitators that don't do transactions, so that, and maybe facilitators that don't hate transactions either. Facilitators that are kind of in the middle and could say, well, what's best for you all and for this entity? What's the best thing? And try to help lead you to that, instead of having, feelings about it themselves and their own momentum around it. You don't want that. So, but I do think if it were me and I'm running a CPA firm right now, I'm going to unify my partnership group on some kind of strategy, and then we're going to begin executing it. And I'm going to create a position statement of some kind to my team that helps them know we're thinking about this, we're exploring it, and we're evaluating it. And we, here are some of our commitments inside that, whatever they could be. Whatever we could affirmatively commit to our team, I would be doing it. Because otherwise they're just watching stuff like this thinking, what is happening here? And what is my firm doing? And Renee and I are doing a whole HR huddle on this, because a lot of our coaching conversations and a lot of our leadership classes with future leaders are being kind of dominated by this. I wonder, I'm worried that, and it's because the leaders are not allaying those concerns.
Right. Well, and we do have some resources as you're talking about the communication strategies. We have some really great change communication resources if folks want to reach out to us for those articles and tools. And then also, Jen, we're doing a webinar. I believe it's next week, next Thursday, on avoid merging. I think it's July 25th. And so that is really for firms who have decided that they don't want to merge or don't want to take private equity money or want to stay independent. And so we're going to go through some of the qualities of firms that are remaining independent. What are some things that make it more likely that you can remain independent? We think attributes. And then we're also going to talk about some strategies to help firms then bridge from here to that safe, more independent space if they want to stay there. And so, I will definitely put that. We don't have Caroline with us here today, but we'll get that out on social media so folks know about it, or definitely you can reach out to us if you can't find it. It's on our website, upcoming events. You can find it there, or you can reach out to us and we'll help you with it. But just some things that might help firms. And I've been wondering, Jen, we said when we were creating the materials for that it was going to be for firms who have decided already. But there may be firms who are kind of on the fence and trying to figure it out. And it might be interesting for them to come and be a part of that conversation to say, how far off are we, or what are some of the things we would have to focus on if we do want to remain independent? It might inform that facilitated discussion that you're talking about getting on the same page as a partner group. If we knew better, what is it going to take? What does convergence coaching think it's going to take to remain independent?
Well, and Renee, I was just thinking, like, while you were saying all of that, that we don't ever want to lie in our communication. So when we're saying, hey, man, don't be silent, we're not saying,
make something up.
Yeah. Well, or worse, promise something you can't deliver. Okay. So that's what we're not saying that. So again, if I'm a firm leader and I can't rule out a transaction, or not in the place this year to rule out a transaction, then I might say, hey, we are watching what's happening in our marketplace. We are learning about what these transactions look like. We are not ruling them out, but we do not expect to undertake such a transaction this year. We're not saying we're going to do it either, but we are not burying our head in the sand here, folks. And as we get smarter about it, and as we begin to see whether we should really double down on staying independent, or we see possibilities in these other strategies that are out there, we will keep you informed. I mean, that's an okay, truthful statement if you can't rule it out. It's not saying we're not doing it at all, but it's also not, if you haven't really started engaging with a broker and you're not in the process of talking to bankers and you're probably not transacting this year, saying we don't expect it, because literally with the number of announcements being made, people wonder if their firm's about to announce in 5 minutes. They're like watching your conference room and looking at your calendars and stuff to see what's happening with meetings, because they're scared that a transaction is going to catch them by surprise and mess up their career path. And think for just a second, empathetically, if you could, for those that have sort of been following a path to partner in your organization in their minds. They've pictured a certain structure and they've pictured getting to be at the partner level at some point. If partnership is off the table because the firm splits and a test goes this way and my group stays over here and we take on private equity money and now we're all directors and my path changes. And while that might be good for me, I don't understand it. And I'm scared of it. And I had all these dreams of partnership and now it's getting messed up, or it could get messed up. And so that's what you're trying to avoid. Your best and brightest people closest to promotion into leadership from thinking, man, I got to go somewhere else because I just can't trust that these guys aren't going to knock me off my feet here. And I could get partnership somewhere else. They're telling me that, maybe they already did a transaction. They already merged or whatever, or maybe they're remaining fiercely independent, marketing the heck out of it as a competitive advantage. And I think I'll go there because I just am suspicious of this silence. That's what Renee and Jen are trying to bring to you as talent leaders. The silence is risky.
Yes. And I think in that example, Jen, it's a great time to invite them into the discussion. And, as I was picturing your email, your communication that you just basically wrote for our audience, they could come back here, listen to the recording, write that down. Maybe there's even a transcript. That, at the end of that, we could say, we invite your thoughts and ideas on this and what you're seeing in the market. And, please talk to so-and-so if you have any questions or you would like to discuss this with us. So opening up that door, so that they know they can input to the process. I love that. So thanks everyone for coming to this conversation, this kind of heavy conversation about communication strategies, change communication strategies, and really getting out in front of that with your people, not leaving them wondering. And there's other places to apply this also as they look at their more mature leaders and they wonder what's happening with these folks, how long will they be around? You can apply this across to lots of the big moves that we have to make as a business that are going to stabilize us. And, are we proactively managing the communication around that? So if you have thoughts, if you have questions, we hope you'll reach out to us. And we always enjoy being with you on Monday afternoon. We'll be here again next week, same time. I think Tamara will be back next week. She was not available this week, so I subbed in for her. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a good rest of your Monday. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Renee.